we're back. Welcome to Geography Now with Miss Shana Day. Today, continuing our topic on developing our map skills, we're going to be focusing on giving direction of one place in relation to another using the 16 points of the compass. 2. Measure the grid bearing of one place in relation to another. Get your geometry sets out. We're going to need those rulers. Using scale to measure distance. Now, the CSEC syllabus requires students to be able to use a scale on a map to determine actual distances between points on the ground. The scale on the map you will be presented with may be in the form of a ratio such as 1 to 25,000. This means that 1 unit on the map represents 25,000 of these same units on the ground. Therefore, on a map with this scale, 1 centimeter on the map represents 25,000 centimeters on the ground. 1 inch on this map represents 25,000 inches on the ground. Your map should also have a linear or graphic scale. This is a black and white bar which shows distances in kilometers or miles, or even both. Let's have a look at that scale. Now, this linear or graphic scale shows distances on the map in both kilometer and miles. Measuring straight line distance. Now, you may be required to measure the distance in straight line between 2 objects on your map. Let's call them objects A and B. This is a relatively simple process. All you need to do is measure the distance from object A to object B on your map and use a scale to determine the actual distance. Let's look at method 1. Now let's suppose the distance between the object on the map when measured with a ruler is 10 cm and the scale on the map is 1 to 25,000. The actual distance can be determined by multiplying the distance on the map by 25,000 as shown on screen. A second method is that you can use a piece of paper to mark the distance between objects A and B on your map. Then hold the piece of paper against the graphic scale to determine the actual distance. Ensure that you begin measuring from the point on the scale marked with a 0. The video demonstrates this process.
Today I'm going to demonstrate how to measure distance using scale. You need to have your map. You need to have a slip of paper. The very first question says Charlottetown and Summerside. Now, the directions are use a slip of paper and scale on this map to determine the distance between the following places. Don't forget to include the units of the scale, kilometers, in each answer. So we need to find first Charlottetown and Summerside. So here is Summerside. Here is Charlottetown. Charlottetown has a dot that's bigger, and the words Charlottetown are bigger because Charlottetown is the capital city of this province. So the next thing we need to do, since we've found these 2 communities, we're going to lay down our slip of paper so that we can see the dots that are represented by Summerside and Charlottetown. The next step is to make a mark that represents each of these places on the slip of paper, like that. The next step is to label each of those spots S, and C. Now we need to use the scale. We're going to slide this paper up to the scale so that the S is on 0. We're using 25 kilometers. We're not going to use 25 miles because we are in Canada and we use kilometers. So we're going to line the S for Summerside up against the 0, and then we're going to mark as far as we can, which is right here. And that represents 25 kilometers. So I'm going to mark 25 down here. The next step is to slide the paper over so that that 25 mark lands on the 0. And I make another mark as far as I can go before going past our Charlottetown mark. So that's another 25 kilometers. Now I slide that over, and I'm ending up halfway between 0 and 6.25. So what we're going to do is we're going to estimate, that's about halfway, and halfway between 0 and 6 is 3. So that's 3 kilometers from this point to this point. Now I'm going to add up my numbers. 25 plus 25 plus 3, 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So I write down my ones, and I carry my tens. Now I add the tens column. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. So then I write the answer right here, which is 53 kilometers. And that's how we find out how to figure out the distance using scale on a map. Thank you.
Distance along a road, railway, etc. Now you may be asked to determine the distance along a feature on the map, such as a section of road or railway, which is not straight. This is only slightly more challenging than straight line distance. All you need to do this is divide the road or railway into sections which are fairly straight. Use a piece of paper to mark off your starting point and the end of your first section. Move the paper so you can mark from the end of the first section to the end of the second section. Continue in this manner until you have marked off all the sections. If you have done this, you will now have the distance along the road or railway, or whatever feature may be, on a straight piece of paper that you can measure against your linear scale as described in the previous section. This is demonstrated in the video.
Okay, now we're going to measure the distance on a curved pathway or curved road from the water tower to the Roman Catholic school. And there are two methods. So we'll start with the paper. What you must do, you must align the paper along the road and mark off the points where the road is straight. Where the road curves, just continue to move the paper along, keeping the point there. Just move the paper along while holding on to the last point, and just continue to mark along the road in that manner. It's important that as you're doing this, that you stay on the same side of the road that you've started with. If you're marking along the left side of the road, continue to mark along the left side until you get to the final point. Don't move the paper from left to right. Okay, so now on the paper we have the distance between the Roman Catholic school and the water tower. We have it now on the strip of paper. So now we're ready to take that down to the scale and find out the exact distance between the two points. Okay, once we're at the scale, start at point 0. So I'll align the W at 0 and we'll mark off the kilometers. So that's 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, and basically 3 kilometers. So the distance is 3 kilometers. There's a little space left, but it's very insignificant. So the total distance is 3 kilometers. So the distance is 3 kilometers. There's a little space left, but it's very insignificant. So the total distance is 3 kilometers.
Giving directions. The CSEC syllabus requires students to learn to give directions in terms of the 16 points of the compass shown on screen. In the diagram, wherever they appear, N represents north, as you should know. S represents south, E represents east, and W represents west. Therefore, SE indicates, you got it, southeast. And NNE represents north, northeast, and so on. You must learn these 16 points by heart. I know it might be difficult, but you got this. When giving directions, it is important to figure out your starting point and end point. The question may be posed like this. Give the direction from A to B. In this case, your starting point is A and your end point is B. Or the question may be posed like this. Give the direction of A from B. In this case, your starting point is B and your end point is A. Note the word from lets you know where to start. Example, look at the grid on screen. What is the direction from the hotel in 2246 to the playground in 2448? Now the first step is to figure out the start and end points. Since we're going from the hotel, our starting point is the hotel and our end point would be the playground. Next, we draw a cross directly over the hotel. Then we draw a line from the middle of the cross to the middle of the playground. Let's have a look at the diagram on screen. We observe the line which goes from the hotel to the playground to see which of the 16 points of the compass it most closely matches. In this case, the point the line most closely matches is the northeast. Therefore, we can say the direction from the hotel to the playground is northeast. We can also say that the playground is northeast of the hotel. Now, compass bearing. The CSEC geography syllabus requires students to be able to give directions in terms of the compass bearing. When giving a bearing, direction is indicated using angles. North is indicated as 0 degrees. Angles are measured in a clockwise direction from north. Let's have a look at the compass on screen. Now looking at the compass, you can see that 0 degrees represents north and 90 degrees represents east. 180 degrees represents south, and 270 degrees represents west. The direction of one place from another can be given by measuring the exact angle from north. Giving a bearing. When giving a bearing, it is important to figure out your starting point and end point. The question may be posed like this. Give the bearing from A to B. In this case, your starting point is A and your end point is B. Or the question may be posed like this. Give the bearing of A from B. In this case, your starting point is B and your end point is A. Note the word from lets you know where to start. So be careful when reading the questions. When you have figured out your starting point, the next step is to draw a cross right on top of it. The cross consists of a vertical line and a horizontal line. These lines should intersect exactly on your starting point. Next, draw a line from the middle of the cross to the end point. Place a protractor over the cross. Ensure that the 90-degree line on your protractor runs along your horizontal line, and the line representing 0 and 180 degrees runs along your vertical line. The point where these two lines intersect should be right in the middle of the cross. Your protractor must be properly placed in order for you to get an accurate measurement. Then, you simply measure the size of the angle between north and the line drawn to the end point, moving clockwise. Let's have a look at this example on screen. Look at the grid below. What is the bearing of the hospital in 2445 from the school in 2246? The first step is to figure out the start and end points. Since we're going from the school, our starting point is the school. Our end point is the hospital. Next, we draw a cross directly over the school. Then, we draw a line from the middle of the cross to the middle of the hospital. Let's have another look at a diagram on screen. Then, we simply measure the angle going clockwise from 0 degrees north to the line which goes to the hospital. In the picture above, this angle is indicated by the red arrow. The picture shows the correct placement of the protractor for measuring the angle. Have a look on screen. Now notice that the line represents 0 and 180 degrees runs along the vertical line, and the 90-degree line runs along the horizontal line towards the east. Can you tell the size of the angle? The size of the angle is 120 degrees. Therefore, we can say that the bearing of the hospital from the school is 120 degrees. Example 2. Now you may be asked to give the bearing of an object located somewhere to the western side of your starting point. In that case, the procedure will be slightly different. Consider this question. What is the bearing of the school in 2246 from the church in 2447? Let's have a look on screen. Now, since we're going from the church, our starting point is, that's right, the church. And our end point is the school. We draw a cross right on top of the church. Then we draw a line from the middle of this cross to the school. This has been done. See the example on screen. Now we need to measure the angle from north to the line which goes to school. In the picture, this angle is indicated by the green arrow. However, we do not need to measure this entire angle. We already know that the angle from north to south is 180 degrees. All we need to do is measure the rest of the angle indicated by the red arrow and add 180 degrees to it. First, we place the protractor as shown on screen. Notice that the line representing 0 and 180 degrees runs along the vertical line, and the 90 degrees line runs along the horizontal line towards the west. You can tell the size of the angle. Can you? Next, we measure the size of the angle in a clockwise direction. So from south to the line going to the school, the size of this angle is 58 degrees. However, this is not our final answer. Remember, we are measuring the angle in a clockwise direction from north. Also remember that the angle from north to south is 180 degrees. Therefore, our final answer is determined as follows: 180 degrees plus 58 degrees equals 238 degrees. Therefore, we can say that the bearing of the school from the hospital is 238 degrees. I know, right? Pretty cool. I want to thank you for being a part of today's lesson, and I trust that you have learned. I look forward to you tuning in next time. This is Geography Now with Miss Shauna Day. Bye.